Hi there. Welcome back to the Lighthouse Sessions. I'm excited today. I have Barbara with us. Barbara, why don't you introduce yourself? Just tell my audience a little bit about who you are and what you do.
Okay, thank you, Jeff. Thank you for having me and doing this wonderful work with the Lighthouse Sessions. My name is Barbara. I'm from the Netherlands. I'm a business psychologist, meaning that I'm working on the intersection of entrepreneurship, leadership, and psychology, and especially on trauma psychology. So I'd like to take the whole range. Beyond that, I'm a mother of two daughters, and I live in a little village next to the sea in the Netherlands.
Love it. Love it. Well, let's talk about leadership for a minute. So, first and foremost, what do you do as a business psychologist? What sort of things are you working on with your clients?
Yes, well, actually, I offer a journey to my clients, I always say. So I don't mention it like a training, it's a journey containing of three tracks, so to speak, right? So the first track is all about inner wisdom, I guess. So it's a deep dive journey within. And I'd like to extend that journey if the client wants to even generational factors. So we also look at epigenetical factors, for example. We dive deep into our ancestral history, so to speak, and we see what has charged you as an individual, because what has charged you from the past is the way you show up today as a leader, right? Or as an entrepreneur. So that's the first track. And I noticed that this track, well, is actually determined 60% of what's happening after. But just knowing yourself, learning to get, well, your inner wisdom, as well as in your body, as in your mind, is one thing. But then translate it to an efficient business operation is something else. So the second track is all about visionary business planning. It's a whole different subject, but you charge actually what you learned in the first track within your plan for your company in the second track. This is all about vision and execution. And the last track, the third one, is about translating that to your daily, inspired, hopefully, business operation. So you get accountability. So you're going actually from, the journey within to accountability on the outside, building your business from the inside out, in a nutshell.
I love that. Now we're going to talk a little bit about the specifics of how somebody, because I have a lot of guests who talk about the end result, but first and foremost, people need to see themselves and say, oh my God, I need to work with Barbara. So what is somebody talking about? What are they struggling with? What's going through their head when they realize they need to talk to you and get your help?
Right. Well, to be honest, I think that people, when they come to me, there's always, of course, a kind of urgency, and that is around the fact they are overwhelmed. That could be on the inside, it could be within the family situation, it could be within the business situation. So it's all integrated, but they don't oversee what's happening. So you could say that their nervous system is on high speed all the time, right? It's on survival mode, so to speak. And well, I'm sure maybe you had also some speakers in your Lighthouse sessions that speak about an overwhelmed or overactivated nervous system, because it's very difficult then to relate to what you're doing and to communicate with the people around you. How does that look? What do you see in practice? Well, things are going wrong in the business, for example. People are getting ill, they're checking out. They are present, but they are not doing anything anymore. They're getting burned out. Business goes slower, for example. So you see all kind of the things determined that you can even measure that go worse and worse over time. But you can also see it in the relationships that these founders or leaders have in their families, for example. So the personal relationships are under threat, maybe. They're having more quarrels with their partner or their children. So the system is on high alert. I think that's an interesting way to start. And the other thing is why people come and work with me is because they're ready. And that's a very important thing. And with readiness, I mean, and that doesn't go for everybody, but they feel deep down inside, okay, I need to change something structural, I have to take the deep dive, not just try it out a little bit, but take the leap of faith, and hopefully I'll land smoothly, which I assure, of course, because that's very important. So I think my clients are mostly, I call them bold and brave visionaries. They're really taking a guess, but it's time. It's time to go there. Yeah.
I love that. And I think, so I am obsessed with the nervous system and I'm fascinated by it. I think most people aren't aware. A lot of the visionary founders I meet, they're aware that there's friction. They're aware that, I've heard it put, why is everybody around me so annoying? And it's because we're on high alert. And, it's like running a business where everything is at the peak. You're in the red zone, and the stresses and friction tend to pop up. Is that a fair comment?
Oh yeah. And I think what I love what you say is, why is everybody around me so irritable, or they don't do what I want, what I have in my head? Why don't they do it, right? And this is so interesting, Jeff, because many things that are inner conflicts or inner pain are often related in our minds, even in my mind, maybe in yours too, to somebody else. So you could even imagine that maybe if you look back, to childhood, for example, that somebody else wasn't there when they were scared, or when they were angry, or when they were sad. And this relationship towards the others makes later in life that we, internalize those messages. It's because of you, for example, or they don't understand me, you externalize it. But more importantly, you also, how do you say that? You also deny yourself in that case. And that's, for me, the biggest clue. Because what if you would take a moment, and move towards the pain or the sadness or the anger that you're really feeling? Go there, even stay with it and work through it, And that's what I see, on world leadership, on community leadership, in businesses, in teams. You see it on every level, that we want to move away from the pain or the anger or the sadness. And that's how we react and run our businesses, make our decisions, design our policies, right? So to move towards what's really bothering you inside, stay with it and work through it. That's, for me, key. And then
I love that. And Barbara, I'll share one of my friends. Before he started doing the work on himself, he actually said, I'm surrounded by idiots. Nobody does what I want them to do. And it is fun to watch him now, because all that's changed is his attitude and his mindset. And all of a sudden, those former idiots are so much smarter and they understand him better. And I think the key I see in a lot of founders is we're going at a speed that most people can't keep up. And we somehow feel their slowness as resistance. And until we remove that block in ourselves, we have to accept that nobody's going to move as fast as the founder, because nobody's life is on the line like the founders.
Exactly. There's another interest. And what's interesting in what you say is, if you move towards that, or you change your attitude, it seems like a whole new universe is coming up there. If you go behind the tension, the relaxation comes. I always compare it very simple with yoga. For example, you stand in a difficult, tense position and you stay with it. At one point, you are going to relax in this position and you're going to accept it and work with it. And when you do, then the magic starts, right? Then it begins. Another example for me is that I swim all year round in the North Sea, which is pretty cold at the moment. So it's around 5 degrees. It's the same situation, right? You go in, you're like, wait, what? And I'm doing this for 6 years, but still it's like, wow. And then you move, with the elements, you go through it, you do your breathing and everything. And every time when we walk out, it's like, it wasn't that bad. But it took a lot, to go through the ordeal and the challenge. And then it's not that bad. And you feel very powerful. Yeah.
So let's talk about, I think we've got it pretty clear on who needs this kind of thing. And from my point of view, part of healing myself was recognizing that it wasn't that other people weren't listening to me, they weren't capable of keeping up with, because I saw the future and I was expecting them to catch up and see the future with me. But most people can't see beyond the day to day. They're trying to make it to lunchtime in a lot of cases.
Yeah.
So let's talk about the concept of a healed leader. So first and foremost, how does that impact the leader? And then we'll get into the organization as a whole. So what are
Right.
you seeing in your work when a leader comes to you and they haven't done any inner work and then they start to work with you? What are they expressing after they've started to make some progress?
Yeah, I love that question. Well, I think, first of all, the awareness that maybe around 8 or 10% of us are visionary leaders, right? So we all have different profiles. We are not the same. I am more like the visionary integrator. I'm next to the visionary, so that I'm coming from a completely different angle. And I know what their profile is and what I can offer, how we can co-create. So that's the first thing, awareness around that. And when they come, they are ready again. So otherwise they won't come. So I'm not even co-creating with clients that are not ready anymore, because that isn't working. So they know we want to go a little bit deeper, right? And this readiness, if I look now to stories, looking back, if we did this journey, those 3 tracks that I spoke about earlier, I think the most important feeling is relief. So they tell me that the first track really significantly changed how they operate now, towards their team, towards their clients, as well as running their business operations or business models. So these insights change a lot. Before, for example, they were constantly battling with the team, for example, and there had all kinds of, collusions in the team, but not only in the team, also within the business. Things broke, for example, or, it got worse and worse and worse, like the knock on their doors, and they were constantly under stress that things fell off the wagon, or things went wrong all the time. But they did not realize that they were the most how would you say that, most strong factor within those collusions all the time, right? So if you can take that away and you can give those insights like, oh wow, really? I didn't realize that. This energy, of constant making battles is doing a lot. And here is my main point, I guess, with other people, with the team, right? So they're getting frustrated as well. And these people have to come home at night to their families. So if you would ask me to my mission, and these founders want the same mission, to come home at night inspired, fulfilled, relieved, at ease, and not always on this tense anxiety, right? So that's why I work with visionary leaders. They're bold, they're brave, they have great ideas. They're always looking for the next opportunity. It's very hard for them to stay on the ship, because before they see a new ship, let's go. We go to another ship. What's happening behind me? I have no idea. Let's go. So that's difficult for them. But that means that they're always, on this roller coaster energy. And deep down, maybe it's a flight for them, or it's a defense or coping strategy that are using. So it's relief, I guess. Some comments is what they said, like, my business changed significantly, or somebody actually told me, I remember that now, nobody heard me talk as much as she did. One said, I remember recently, this was a recipe from God, which is interesting because it was somebody who really needed to heal at that moment. And you know what it is, and I'm sure you know that, and many people know that, there's just attention, careful attention, just listening, really, really want to know. I really, really want to know this founder. Really
Well,
want to see or hear him, or her. And
and
that's
I think
the
they
most
just want to
important
be
thing.
seen and heard, right?
Everybody, right? I think so. Yeah, maybe that's the cause of many problems, that you do not. If I look to the founders I work with, you have two. One feels I'm not being seen or heard, and the other feels I need to be successful. And then we go back to their youth, and then you see that's the ground theme. Or they were alone, not seen and heard. They didn't have attunement, right, or soothing energy from the parents, or there was a lot of pressure. You need to be an Ivy League, or you need to be a grade A student, or the
Yeah.
picture perfect in a family like that. And the impact is huge later on in life. Yeah.
It's actually fascinating to me because I used to describe my mind. I am a high quick start on the Colby. So you give me an inkling of an idea, and next thing you know, I'm building the prototype, and I get really frustrated when I run into high fact finders, because I've already built the prototype in my head and I'm like, okay, let's go. And meanwhile, a high fact finder, which in visionary world is usually the integrator, they're asking really annoying questions like, what material are you going to build it out of? How are we going to sell this? There's an inherent friction there. I've learned, and this is just getting to know myself, I have R&D time where I am experimenting and I can play all I want. And then when I'm with my people, it's okay, we're on this boat together. But the old me would jump off the boat because it wasn't moving fast enough, and I'd swim ahead and start gathering materials to build the faster version.
Right. Yeah.
So we tend to create a lot of chaos behind us.
Exactly.
And it's funny because an integrator said, oh, you visionaries, you're all evil because you create chaos. And it's like, no, we don't mean to do that. We're impatient with ourselves. If it feels like we're impatient with you, it's because we're trying to get to the future we envision.
Exactly. I was just yesterday, it's an interesting example, maybe looking to a TV series. It's about Queen Victoria, actually. And they're talking about the locomotive, the steam train, is that the right word? The railway, the beginning of the railway. And then you see the same, these were visionaries. Of course, it was the future, but you see also the conservatives like, we don't need that. We have to take care of our land, and we don't want this in our land. We don't need to be connected. We love our own little. Okay, so here you have it. But if you translate that to teams, and I've been there myself, these people that are on the lines, they don't call around, they're on the lines, they are so extremely important. I have learned to appreciate them. But before, I reckon, like, don't be that annoying. Let's go. We need to go. We need to move forward.
Yeah,
so
come on.
I have both, the integrator and the visionary. And later on, I realized that the project was a big success because we were complementary. And it took for me patience, which is difficult for somebody who is a quick starter, and sees ahead. That's difficult. But it's also difficult for the person that is walking the line or not coloring with outside of the lines to keep up with you. So actually you have both the same challenge, right? To challenge yourself, for me, becoming more patient, for them, maybe to stretch a little bit of their point of view. And then you have the same challenge, which works great together as long as you respect that and you are aware of it. Yeah.
And honestly, I think it took me a lot of inner work to get to that point. And it is funny because most of my life, people would have described me as impatient. People have called me arrogant, insensitive. I've had to go to sensitivity training when I had a job because I couldn't understand why people didn't want to do things better, faster. And again, there are those people that just want to come to work every day, punch in the clock, do their thing, and go home.
Right.
And now I realize I was a terrible employee because I was always trying to fix things.
Exactly.
No matter how big the organization, no matter how routine the job was, I would find a way to do it better, faster. And what I didn't realize was that it was threatening to my colleagues because they didn't understand what I was trying to build. They didn't want to have to learn something new. And what I realized was, again, in their nervous systems, they were fighting for survival, and I was the threat.
Exactly. Yes.
And now I look back and go, oops, because it was never my intent.
It isn't. It's never your intent. For me, the question was raised like, if you look back, and I know you shared with me, you did a lot of inner work. Could you detect something within your youth, or maybe in your, generational system that is triggering for being this visionary, and being hasty, maybe wanting to change, like you just said, wanted to fix something? Do you see a line there in your history as well?
Oh, absolutely. It is, and it's funny because I can see roots of it in my childhood, but I also, so I'm of German ancestry, and World War I and World War II played very heavily into my grandparents and their views of the world, and they came to North America before the wars, in 1910 or something, but there was always this fear coming from, they in the old country, they were wealthy, they had all kinds of land and things. Coming over here, they were starting over, and so hard work was not a nice to have, it was an expected. And that rippled down into my parents, and then obviously into my generation. I'm doing the work, and I'll tell you, Barbara, the final point for me was, a friend of mine, Dr. Doug Brackman, said, we carry intergenerational trauma until one generation is willing to draw a line in the sand and say it stops with me.
Right.
And he said, but most people pass it on to their kids. And I exist for my boys. And it was like, no way in hell am I letting them deal with something because I wasn't willing to go through it myself.
Well, there you go. Yeah.
And, I will say, for anybody who's listening, inner work feels hard until you start to see the results of it. And then, people ask me why I kept going. And it was like, because there was no way I was going back.
No way. No. It's a point of no return, I think, right? It's beautiful. You make the whole circle closing, you're closing the loop like your boys, right? That's everything. You need to, you do have the urgency and you're ready. That is absolutely amazing, coming from a place that you maybe really thought, but I'm doing great things, but the perspective of others could be different. I love what you're saying, Jeff. Even being open for that gives you such, like I said in the beginning, a whole new universe is opening up, maybe a whole new language, even our primary language, our body language is speaking, which we all share. And this is really driving me. And I'm so happy that we have this talk. What if more leaders create this awareness, do this work? Because the leaders, we have so many leaders in the world. It's about 7 or 8% of our global population. No army can beat that, right? What if we can do healing work through those bold and brave visionary leaders for their team, so their legacy, which they love legacy, that could be in any kind of way, doesn't need to be with the company, could be for their kids, for example, or answer the healing that is needed in the generational line. But leaving a legacy is their core drive. Most of the times. So it's an infinite source to me to work on that.
When I interview people for the show, legacy, impact, future is almost always the number one thing. And I have this belief that as that minority, to be a truly visionary founder, somebody asked me how they could become one, and I said, well, you kind of got to be born sort of crazy, but half jokingly. But the reality is either we heal and we do great things, or we don't heal, we stay damaged, and boy, do we cause damage. Like if you look
Yeah,
at history, the good and bad was created by people like us.
exactly.
And the only difference was, were they healthy and well adjusted, or were they a little angry at something from their childhood, for example?
And think about it, that your grandparents, my grandparents the same, and our parents were born and raised in World War One and Two. And what's happening now, we have so many conflict situations in the world, the most ever. We are, yeah, it's hard to think about, but the generations still to be born and already born will be influenced by all that trauma they are receiving. So we have a collective urgency, right? As leaders as well. But to me, if you make it really small, and I think our stories relate a little bit. I was also born in an entrepreneurial family, so I was front row as a 4-year-old to see how things should not have been done. Love my
Yeah.
parents, to the moon and back. That's not the point, but they were always overwhelmed. So I think, or anxious or working. So I think the question or the work found me at a young age already, figure this out. And that's why I operate on not only psychology, but also business operations. So that's a very important combination, operating in the middle, holding maybe the paradox or maybe uniting the opposites together. And then we need to talk about trauma. And right now I'm being trained as an EMDR provider, which is amazing to learn about that, because that's all about, regulating the nervous system and reprocessing painful emotions. Beautiful, beautiful. And I hope to introduce that to leaders if they're
I
ready.
love it. And honestly, when I look at leaders, again, most of them have good intentions. Most of them want to have a positive impact. And what I see is, when they're not doing the work, when they're avoiding the work, they're running faster, they're working harder, and they're just ruining relationships, not on purpose, but just
Not on
that's one of the
purpose.
side effects.
Yeah.
And I can say, as I started doing the inner work, it's just going to sound weird, but the less of a jerk I was, the less of a jerk everybody else was. Like it was when I recognized, and for me, it's a very weird feeling. I can say this now. I can finally sit still for, an hour and not have to be doing something. Whereas
Wow.
before I would say it was like I was being driven by demons. If I sat still, something cataclysmic, the world was going to end. And
Something needed to happen. Yeah. And
yeah,
you needed to be the one.
yeah,
Yeah. I'm sure
somehow
that you,
it was
I,
that pressure to perform. And
yeah.
again, I was raised that you got to be the best and blah, blah, blah. And
Yeah.
my parents meant well. They did the best they could with the information they had. But I realized, and this was the final piece for me, they didn't know what they were doing any more than I know what I'm doing raising kids. I mean, every day it's an experiment and you hope you get it right.
Yeah.
But when I work on myself, it magically transforms the relation. There's less friction at home, there's less friction at work.
Yes.
Everybody around me is happier and I enjoy what I'm doing. So to me, going through that little I love a quote from Winston Churchill. You can borrow this, but famously he said, when you're going through hell, keep going.
Keep going. I love
And
it. Yeah.
there's a corollary where it says, and then when you get through, help others. And I find it fascinating because when I meet other people who are doing the work, we all seem to want to heal others too. Now, I'm not trained in it. I don't plan on becoming trained in it. But for me, this is why I do the Lighthouse Sessions. I can
Yes.
connect people and say, you need to meet Barbara.
Yes. But that is such important work, because we are co-creating together, right? You are providing the platform, and I'm very thankful that you're giving me a voice on your platform. And now we are co-creating together, which I do in my circle for visionary founders. Same situation. I bring health experts and visionary founders together on a platform. let's talk. Just let's talk and learn from each other. And what you say is interesting. Like, I think your nervous system regulated, or, well, you got to talk with your nervous system, to talk with you, and your parts, and be compassionate with them, not against them or with them. And nervous systems read other nervous systems. That's so interesting, right? So you can often feel an energy like, we can connect together, we can relate. That's also a form of readiness you can sense. And founders often realize once they get through this calmness, maybe, or they can regulate themselves, that's when the relationship changes with their teams and their partners, which is way more big of an investment, return of investment, than they were thinking. So there's something upfront, so there's something magical going on always in that work, which is truly, Jeff, it's an honor. I can feel it, the goosebumps in my. It's an honor to walk with people who experience that, and I've experienced it myself. And still, two important things. One, it's never conscious. It's not on purpose that you do it. You need to maybe get the right mentors, get the right situation. It could be anything. Trauma is always, in a way, unconscious, the way you respond. It's not like you're doing it on purpose. That's very important. And at the same time, I think I lost my second point now. I had two things. But realizing that is also very... People are not doing things on purpose. But what can you do as a founder to regulate yourself and then being meaningful and impactful with your relationships at home?
I'm going to share something with you, Barbara, and this advice annoyed me to no end before I did the work. So I would always ask people who had done the work, and I'd say, okay, how can I help my wife? How can I help my kids? And they'd always say, do the work. And I'm like, that doesn't make any sense. And now I look back and go, it makes perfect sense.
Yes, it does now. But what is it, right? Doing the work. That's also, and it's not only... That's interesting maybe to also talk about a little bit. Doing the work, it's an ongoing job. So, for example, now in 2 weeks, I have a founder speaking in my circle, Michael Baldwin. So he was a very successful leader, partner, everything. And then something tipped off in his life and everything fell, and he went back into his old trauma. And he did the work for 2 years. He did EMDR. So that is beautiful. But it's still ongoing. The work is keep on going until you do your last breath. And then it's, and your children or your next generation or the people that you have guided in your life will so benefit from your work, but it never stops. What is the work? It's maybe different for anybody else. But if you make it really plain, it's just stretching. Maybe our window of compassionate space is how I call it, the window of tolerance, or maybe stretching the space between trigger and response. There's a whole world of opportunities there. And I love teaching that, that's just
I live in that little space now because it's like, because the old me, trigger, response, instant. And, not always the best response, but one of the things I say is we develop. It's like time slows down now, and you can step into that space and you can actually choose a response. When you give other people that space, they give it back to you without knowing that you've done it. They mirror you. Now, you and I could talk a lot, but I know you have a hard stop. Where can people go to learn more about you, connect with you, and discover how they might be able to work with you?
Right. Well, I started my own practice. It's an international practice for visionary founders, but also visionary companies. And it's just companies that want to make an impact, people that want to make an impact. And it's called Vision Alliance. And vision is within, as well as for a company, it's all about alignment. So Vision Alliance is my place. But on LinkedIn, you can find anything on what I'm doing, including my next circle. And the things I've done there. So I think that's a good spot to land as well.
Awesome. Well, I really want to thank you, Barbara. I know we've chatted before. I'm really excited to share what you do. I think our visionaries, we need this. This is unprecedented. Everything's moving faster. We weren't programmed for this lightning pace. We were meant to sit and wait in the bushes and go hunting and jump out at when an animal came by, not always on high alert. So thank you for being on the show and sharing what you do.
Thank you, Jeff, for having me. It's really a great joy being on your show today and yeah, sharing this work together. So thank you for your work as well.
Well, thank you.
Okay.